Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Photo Mish Mash. This one being broadcast live October 20th, 2021. I am so very excited to have a new guest on the show today with some really cool experience that I'm looking forward to picking her brain about. And joining me, as usual, and I'm very lucky to have him as well, Steve Scurich. We'll start with you. Steve, how are you doing?
I'm great. Yeah, it's good to be back with everybody. We had an awesome trip in Zion and now preparing for Italy. So my mind is just kind of in all these different places, but I'm super excited. I'm not going to take long on my intro tonight because I'm on the East Coast time. I'm super excited about Lindsay joining us. This is a real honor, and I'm stoked to get to know you a little bit, and welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Glad I
So
could make it.
this is Lindsay Wasson. And as I said, very excited to have you on. We started talking. I've been following you for a while because you're a local Seattle area photographer. But as you describe yourself, you are a freelance visual journalist, and you have shot for and continue to shoot for the AP, Reuters, Getty. You formerly shot for the Seattle Times, and you shoot for the Sounders. Is that correct as well?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. And as I said, I was following you, and then all of a sudden you were posting incredible pictures from the Olympics, and I was like, "Wow, this is awesome." So you covered the Olympics too, and we want to just kind of chat this beginning chit chat section. I just want to ask you some questions about how all of that works, because I think as a kid, when you think about photography, you're like, I want to be a photographer. I think kind of what you do is what a lot of people think that they might want to do, or that's what photography means to them in their mind. And I think a lot of people end up in very different places, but you're doing it. And so I'm just curious about how it all works. So let's start with, did you want to do this as a kid? Is this what you dreamed of as a kid?
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe not my exact job path. I don't think I was that forward thinking. Some people are. I think, as a kid, I like taking pictures. I mean, I think most people like taking pictures. I did a lot of photography in high school, and was like on yearbook, and and did that kind of thing. And actually did go to college for it. So I did get a BFA. I went to Seattle U. So I really kind of stayed in the Seattle area. I like this mug. Not to sidetrack, but gotta give props to the mug. And yeah. So I think I don't think that I envisioned myself doing exactly what I'm doing right now. I wasn't like, I want to be like a photojournalist, or I want to be a sports photographer. In high school, I didn't actually take that many pictures of people, besides the yearbook stuff. I did more like landscapes and nature stuff, and kind of came to photojournalism more in college, like the middle of college. But yeah, I definitely, I've always loved taking pictures, and somehow ended up that ended up being my job. A lot of luck to get here, for sure.
Well, you say luck, but I imagine there was a bit of hard work in there.
For sure. It's a lot of both. I think I don't think that you can underestimate being in the right place at the right time. Obviously, like hard work is a given, but I think a lot of people, myself included, like your career path is it's so affected by knowing the right person who might help recommend you for this, or like all these little things that kind of add up. And there's only so much you can do about that. You can network, and you can just be nice to people in the field so that you get recommended for things. But I think there's an element of luck, for sure. At least I think so.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And so when did you leave the Seattle Times and go? I mean, would you call yourself 100% freelance? Is that correct?
Yeah. So yeah, I left in early 2017. Actually got laid off. It's a rite of passage for journalism. But yeah, so from 2017, full freelance. And interestingly, I feel like I've kind of, in some ways, I feel like I've kind of like recreated parts of being a, like a staff photographer at a newspaper, in terms of like the amount of stuff that I'm doing and the types of things that I'm doing. Maybe just with a little more freedom, and obviously for a lot of different clients and not just one. But there's for me at least, I do kind of a mixture of sports and news and editorial, a little bit of commercial stuff here and there. But yeah, that's so yeah. Right now, it's a lot of sports this year, obviously. Now that sports is kind of back, and last year was endless news. So it definitely depends a lot on the week, on the year.
Yeah. So your schedule sounds like it could be very different from day to day, but if you kind of had to give us a typical day, what would that look like?
Oh man, I was thinking about this. I was like, I don't know what that is. I probably should have a typical day. That might be better, for my own like sanity. But it really depends. I think it's maybe better to look at it in terms of like a typical week. And even that is like all over the place. So I think, at least for me, and a lot of people maybe are more organized about the way that they schedule themselves. But I can start a week with no assignments, and then by the end of that week have worked every single day. And some weeks are planned out more. So there's really not like a really common sense of get up, get my coffee, like do my edit, go to this place, just because so much of what I do is really variable. Like today I had a tour of this place called the Climate Pledge Arena, which is where our NHL team will play, the Kraken. And that's my assignment for the day. And then I've got this. And then the rest of the week is, a mixture of like sort of commercial stuff and some more stuff for the New York Times. But I'd say, because I do a lot of sports, there does tend to be a lot of like nights and weekend work. I don't really have a true weekend. I don't know what that means anymore. Days of the week are sort of just like titles at this point. So I think, at least for what I do, I think people, have to realize like you don't have like, there's not a 9 to 5, right? I mean, I think that's probably obvious. But if you want to do, I guess, what I'm doing, there is a lot of flexibility that has to be involved in order to just be available for all of these different things that come up. So yeah, it's maybe not like the smartest or healthiest way to have a schedule, but that's kind of how it's going for me right now. So
yeah, and I would imagine it's fairly typical of most freelance photojournalists. I mean, when there's work, you should work.
That's kind of it's hard to say no unless you've got a really good reason. And it's also, I think, kind of whether or not it actually results in this. I think sometimes some of it is just feeling like you have momentum. I think it's really easy to get kind of like bogged down when you there's not assignment work, and you can't like just sit around and like sit by your phone and be like, an editor is going to call me soon, because who knows? You have no control over that. And so it's a lot of like, yeah, let's take this work. Great, I can do this assignment. I'll just have to smash it in against a bunch of other things. Like on this weekend on, I think Saturday, I'll have the Sounders game, and then we'll have to rush to do the Kraken game for two different clients. So there's a lot of stuff like that where it's like there's work when there's work, and take it when you can. So yeah.
Well, I got so many questions, and Steve, if you have any questions too. The first question that comes to mind when you mentioned like this weekend, you're going to be shooting a full match of the Sounders and then rush over and shoot the Kraken NHL. Are you handing off images during the shoot? I mean, your Wi-Fi or Ethernet, and they're going to an editor, or are you editing 1,000 or so or more images that you're shooting at a match? How does that workflow work for you?
I mean, again, I feel like it depends is sort of my motto right now, but it does depend. So for the Sounders specifically, it's much different than working for a newspaper or a wire service. And that's the other thing that you have to deal with when you're a freelancer is just like remembering and like being comfortable switching between all these different types of workflows. Because all of these places that I freelance for, like they all have slightly different ways of doing things, and sometimes they're vastly different. So for the sounders, the one nice thing is that there's no captioning because it's for the team, and so it's really just about getting it to them as fast as possible. So usually we try. There's a couple like points during the game that we try to hit. So like maybe before the 30th minute, give or take, and then before maybe the 70th minute, 80th minute in the second half, where you want to get as many pictures out before that time so that all of the social people that work for the Sounders can kind of start prepping tweets or Facebook posts or something. And obviously that depends a lot on the game, right? Sometimes they don't score until inconvenient 44th minute or something like that, or the 90th minute. We have a lot of late scores for the Sounders, so there's a lot of that kind of stuff that you just have to be flexible. And I'm just using I actually have very old gear due for an upgrade soon, so I've been doing a lot of testing, but I just have I shoot Canon, so I've got a little transmitter that hooks onto the camera. You connect to your phone, and then you're just FTPing in photos, as the game goes on. Obviously goals are like the most important. So that for the Sounders, it's much different. If it was for a wire, like I shot for Getty, I shot the Rams Seahawks game the other week. And that, if I do it for them again, I might change the way that I do this, depending on how well the Wi-Fi works in that stadium. But for that, it was communicating with the other photographer and like physically running in back and forth between the field and the photo workroom if there was, a touchdown that was in front of me or something that was happening. So it really depends a lot on the client and on the individual game sometimes. So yeah, I could get really into the super specifics, but that's kind of the like general response to a lot of these things is it kind of depends. You kind of have to be super flexible.
Yeah. All right. So the Olympics, kind of the ultimate sporting event. I think kind of for many photographers who shoot sports, that's probably like the thing you aspire to shoot. How did that work out? How did it work out to get invited to shoot there?
Yeah, so I do a lot of like more news work for Reuters. Reuters actually in the US does not do sports unless it's like maybe the Super Bowl or something. They have this contract with USA Today, which is like USATSI, USA Today, Sports Illustrated. And so they kind of use pictures from them. So I'd actually never shot sports for Reuters until the Olympic stuff. And I was just asked. I do a lot of stuff for them. I did a lot of stuff for them last year, obviously with the pandemic and all the protest stuff. So it felt like I was like nearly a staffer that last year, just the sheer amount of work that I did. So I got invited by Corinne Perkins, who's our North America pictures editor. She's super great. And she basically had just sent me an email actually in 2019. I forget about this because it, got delayed a year.
Right.
So early, I think maybe mid 2019, she just sent me an email and was like, do you want to go to the Olympics? And I'm like, yes, agree. Yes, I agree. Yeah. So that was, it was a surprise to me. I hadn't like reached out or anything. I think that she knew that I did a lot of sports for the paper and obviously shoot sports for the Sounders and stuff. So she knew that I could handle that. And so joined the Reuters team. I think, don't quote me on this, I want to say it was maybe like 70 photographers. And then a lot of like support staff and some editors. But yeah, pretty crazy experience. First Olympics. So it was a big learning experience for me too. I was sort of along for the ride. It kind of felt like, being put in front of a moving train and just trying not to get run over. So yeah, definitely a little bit of a marathon for sure.
Interesting. And this is a kind of a behind the scenes picture we have up right now. It looks like you are working while maybe waiting to catch a bus to
Oh
an event
boy,
or something.
yes. Yes, I guess that's one of the, I think that's one of the things you were talking about, like, oh, when you're thinking about the Olympics and oh, it's the Olympics and it's like the peak of,
Hmm.
excitement and of sport and like it's the peak of your career and like it is, obviously very exciting and obviously, this year was different than other sporting events because of all the COVID restrictions and the no fans. But a lot of the Olympics is waiting and a lot of patience and just like some nonsense that you have to deal with. You're there to work, and so it's kind of like, well, if you have to wait for this bus, that's what you're gonna do. But
Hmm.
we missed the bus as an example. So this is a big bus depot. That's sort of the central bus depot. So you'll go from your hotel, at least for this Olympics, especially due to COVID, they kind of kept you in sort of separate modes of transportation. And so you would take a bus from your hotel to this giant bus depot. The buses were very on time. Sometimes they were only once an hour. So if you miss that bus, you got to wait there for a whole extra hour. And I think this was me sending. I think Mike Blake, one of the other photographers that I work with, was taking this. This was after we we ran just like as fast as we could to get this bus, and it left right on time. It's very Japanese of them. And I think I was sending an extra photo that one of the editors had requested
Hmm.
so that he could do, a different cool crop or something. But yeah, that's kind of what the Olympics looks like for a third of the time, is sitting in weird spots. Thankfully, this was at night, so it wasn't as hot. But yeah,
That's what I
Japan's
was going to
pretty
ask.
humid, pretty
My
toasty.
memory of seeing the weather was not too pleasant too often.
I guess we haven't mentioned. So I almost was exclusively on gymnastics. I was not too
That's good.
sad
That's good.
about being inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I was really enjoying the air conditioning. Yeah, that's me in the like kind of gray pants. That was taken with one of the remote cameras that it was a different photographer's job solely just to set up all these remote cameras. And it
Mm.
seemed like, I mean, it was a whole other job. It was a lot of like tech stuff.
Hmm.
But
Sure.
yeah, thankfully I did not have to deal with the humidity and the I think some days were just like crazy rain, too much. I had 2 days outside, and they were kind of brutal. I'm glad that I brought some like electrolyte stuff, but a lot of it was spent in this Ariake Arena Gymnastics Center, and you can kind of see those are some of the wide views. So yeah, a lot of it was spent. This was sort of like my second home besides my tiny hotel room was this gymnastics arena.
Mhm.
Um,
And so you don't have a lot of say over what you cover, is that right? You assigned.
yes, yeah. So I think there are a couple people like Donald Morale or somebody fancy like that who's they're kind of off doing whatever they want. So there were some people. Reuters mostly had people stick to specific sports. It depends a lot on what you're assigned to. So like gymnastics, for
Mhm.
example, there's so much gymnastics. It was every day, I think, except for 2 days. So this is from, I think, the first day without gymnastics. This is athletics / track and field. And this was in this sort of like moat. I'm not sure what else to call it besides this moat. It's basically if you're watching the Olympics and you're watching the camera that kind of like it's a parallel camera that falls on a track.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like the cool, like, you're like low and you're following them. So you're basically behind that camera, which means that it sort of burns you when they get right parallel to you because I mean, it's like perfectly on. So I had a couple of really nice pans where I was like, I got it, I did it. And then, you would look and you'd be like, oh, there's a giant camera in the
Mhm.
way. But so yeah, most of the time was in
How
gymnastics,
rude.
one day with athletics, one day in canoe sprint, which is essentially like canoe and kayak
Right
racing.
here. Yeah.
Um, Sorry, I don't know why that one is so tiny, but
Exactly.
yeah, it was I think in some ways it was nice to have like one sport to mostly focus on, but I think the grass is always greener, right? Like I think the people
Mhm.
that got moved around to a bunch of different sports were kind of like, oh, I wish that I had, one sport that was maybe more important, not to be biased, but obviously a lot of people watch gymnastics and it's one of the more like
Sure.
marquee sports of the Olympics.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of pressure to kind of like be on the sport that like people are paying most attention to.
Mhm.
Like with something like canoe sprint, obviously like the athletes, the countries that the athletes are from, like they care a lot. This is like the peak of
Mhm.
their like entire life, right? But like the general public is more focused on, athletics or gymnastics, stuff like that. And so it was like, okay, like don't mess up.
Right. Right. The eyes of the world are actually watching. Yeah. Very cool.
Yes, I think this is one of the photos that essentially everyone who photographs rhythmic gymnastics takes at some point. Just because it's
Sorry, Lindsay, hang on. Your audio's just
yes.
gone robotic. I don't. Now you got quiet.
There we go. Is that any better?
Sounds about the same, I think.
Yeah, a little choppy there.
Interesting.
It just started happening. It hasn't done that.
Yeah, it's been great.
Let me see.
Are you using an external mic?
I'm not. I should be using my my little headphones here. Let's see.
Yeah, it almost sounds like a connection, like a headphone jack or a mic jack is just getting a little wobbly or loose.
We can switch. We can just do no Bluetooth. I don't know if that's going to help at all. Can you try that?
Sure.
Yeah, let's try it for a sec.
These photos are just awesome. I'm loving just kind of sitting back right now, being a spectator of this interview that you're doing, Toby, because I'm so fascinated by
you guys hear me at all now? I just switched.
Yeah, you sound
okay.
Good.
Is that better?
Yeah, that sounds better.
Sorry, yeah. So this is something that I think everybody takes because they do it. It's like a move that I was actually shocked. I had never really watched rhythmic gymnastics before. Obviously not shot it, but they're very flexible. And I think everybody kind of ends up with the headless ball or the headless hoop photo. It's like sort of a crowd pleaser type photo, but it's actually not that difficult to take because once you know the routine, you know when they're going to do that leap. And actually, that's one of the things that I think. I mean, I guess it didn't surprise me about gymnastics, but it's something that we had to keep in mind a lot. Is obviously gymnastics is much different than track and field. Obviously, you know where they're going to be in track and field because they're in their lanes. But gymnastics it's an individual sport competing against other people, right? So they have the routines, and once obviously once they kind of get locked in, that's the routine. So like, for example, I spent a lot of time watching Simone Biles routines, especially her floor routine. And a lot of it is like sometimes strategizing where you're going to sit, where you're going to be, because sometimes that makes a picture, and if you don't know where they're going to do that one pass, or like how high they're going to be, where they finish, like it may end up changing what kind of photo you get. And so I spent a lot of time making sure that I remembered which side Simone Biles did which thing, and then it ended up that she really only competed in balance beam. But that's I think in general, I think that was something that people might not think about, is like when you get there, you're kind of the first thing that I did when I physically got in there was like, okay, where the photo spots, where can we go, where can we not go, how crowded is it going to get in these places, because you have to, obviously you're next to a couple hundred other people, or at least several dozen other people in your same area, like all trying to figure out where to be to get the photo that you need to get. And, you know, in a few cases, if you didn't get to a certain spot in time, you're screwed. You know, there's just nothing that you can do because there are no more spots. So I think that's something that, you know, that people might not think about is especially for gymnastics or things that are a little more like planned, you know, it's like a little, it's a routine, right? You know, you're thinking about, well, okay, so like, for example, I think in some of the preview pictures that I sent over, Toby, there's a couple where they line up, like the one that you just showed with the masks, like they line up with, yeah, that one.
Which one?
Chinese guy.
Oh, right there.
That one. Yeah. So like, you know, the floor is like 3 feet below this, right? You know, and so when you get there, you're like walking around, you're trying to figure out where do you put yourself so that you can set yourself up to make these photos, you know? So it's a lot of like, okay, like this part of his routine is going to look bad. I can't get this. But when he goes up here and he like does this pass, he'll hit the rings. You know, this is, I think a lot of it is storytelling too, right? Like we wanted a picture with all of these masks to kind of show like, this is the COVID Olympics. And so, yeah, it's a lot of like planning ahead and making sure that, you know, that you're in the right spot for what you're trying to get. Yeah,
that's really cool. So for in the case of Simone, you know, you're talking about kind of memorizing her routine. You're watching her practice. Are you basically practicing your photos while she's practicing, or does she practice out on the floor? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I should preface that by saying, like, thankfully, I was able to go to the Olympic trials. Reuters sent me to the trials in St. Louis, which is like about a month before the Olympics. And so that was super helpful. You know, I got asked to photograph gymnastics. I had never photographed gymnastics when they asked me to go to the Olympics. So I was like, I don't know, you know, it's not like soccer, right? Or something that that most people cover. It's very specific. And so they were like, look, let's have you go to the trials. And so, you know, from that, you know, she has the same routine in the trials as she does in the Olympics. And so it was super helpful for me to kind of have that practice, you know, that the practice of her practice really, because, you know, obviously like she essentially was a lock to be on the team. She, you know, only technically needed to participate in the trials. But yeah, I think, yeah, it was helpful, you know, photographing her actual competition during that. They did do what's called podium training. And they do that at the Olympics too, but I actually didn't arrive. I was set to arrive like right before all of the events started. So I didn't get to photograph podium training at the Olympics. But they do a lot of testing of the equipment because all the equipment is, you know, like ever so slightly different. You know, and they want to make sure that it's all set up the way that they want. So the athletes will do podium training, you know, like before or the day before. And that was absolutely super helpful.
Cool. We need to start moving on, but I want to get to what I think is one of the coolest pictures I've ever seen. I mean, these are all so good, but then we get to, it's down here a ways, this.
Wow.
And here's the thing. I don't know if this is original or not. I don't know if you got the idea or you saw some kind of variation of this. I think sometimes, you know, but to me, I've never seen anything like this. I think this is awesome. This picture and the next one that I'll show in a minute are just awesome.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about it.
So yeah, this was actually, I'm really glad that I said that this got published. Only because it originally would not go on the wire. I think I was told like, oh, you know, like we should try not to send photos from warm-ups. This is actually during a warm-up. And so essentially, so this is trampoline gymnastics. If you're not familiar with trampoline gymnastics, it's pretty much what it sounds like, except like, you know, 10 feet higher than what you could do on a trampoline as a kid, you know, in your backyard. So they're going up and down in a very like, it's fairly easy to follow, you know, and as you can see, I mean, I didn't get it like exactly perfect. I was trying for like, you know, robotic precision to get it straight up and down. But you know, you can follow them up and down in a way that's it's much easier to pan than you know, a lot of other sports where they're sort of like running around and being a little more erratic. So essentially this was just me like goofing off and trying to figure out how to, you know, I knew that I wanted something with a low shutter speed. I can't remember exactly what this one was, but it was lower than I thought I would want. It might even be like a 1/6 of a second. It's somewhere between like a 1/6 and a 30th. But it's you know, it was just an exercise in doing it over and over again. And thankfully, because I think there were 3 of us that day on trampoline gymnastics, you know, I kind of got the chance to kind of do the weird stuff that like technically the wire doesn't really want usually, because it's not like a nice stock image, right? Like it's a pretty picture, but it's maybe not going to sell as well. So I got the chance to kind of like dink around and do some weird stuff, and hope that some of these worked. But you know, it was like 98% total fail. A lot of bad photos, like truly the worst. And you know, and this one ended up working. But I kind of dug it out of just like a larger section of these photos, and it's a big crop. Like the original file is like way bigger. So it's a pretty intense crop, but I don't know. There was something about this one that like the lines just worked. You can still kind of read Tokyo 2020, which I thought was kind of handy. And you know, the colors just kind of worked out. And their leotards are, you know, very handily. They're very shiny. I think she's from the Japanese team. I think that the Japanese had the most sparkles on their leotards. So that helped out a lot. And I had
10
I
out
had
of
done
10 for sparkles.
I had done something similar in ice skating thing that I shot for Getty a few years ago. So I was like, oh, like let's try this for trampoline, because it's a lot easier to pan when they're going up and down instead of running in circles. Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned there were a lot of failures, because I think, you know, a lot of folk, we go on workshops lots and we do panning shots, especially in Italy. You know, we're going next week for a workshop, people going by on their scooters. It's so fun to pan and get that nice kind of soft background. And I think people don't realize that the failure rate, even for someone who's really good at these kind of things, is very high when you're trying to create more unique portraits and the shutter speed's a little bit slower than, you know, it typically is.
A lot of almost.
Almost. And this next one.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I was glad that I got to try these, because it was really difficult. The part of the challenge with the Olympics having no fans was the fact that the backgrounds were just disastrous sometimes, because like there's no nice bokeh, there's just these like kind of bright, terrible sort of beige seats that we had. And so it took a lot of work to find this little spot right when they were kind of at the peak of their jump, where it kind of, you know, they went high enough that they were in the blackness. And it ended up helping a lot. I don't know. Some of the shapes that they made were just nice. You know, I think that, you know, I was kind of surprised, like how much fun I had with that. So I'm really grateful that I was able to kind of take part of one of these days to do all the weird stuff that I had really been wanting to do for a lot of the regular gymnastics. But you know, the regular stuff here, it's a little more like, if you mess this up, there's no second, you know, you can't mess up. You can't do a weird photo of Simone Biles and, you know, and make sure that your editors are happy. So you kind of got to take the chances where you can.
Yeah, I understand. All right. Very cool. Let's switch gears a little bit. You mentioned you shoot Canon. I know that all of the major manufacturers were very nicely supported at the Olympics. And you also talking about upgrading possibly. Did you get to test out some new gear? Shot with a new mirrorless at all? And tell us specifically what you shoot with now and where you think you might be in a year or two?
Yeah, guys, my cameras are geriatric. My personal cameras, they should be in a home. They technically still work. I'm on the original 1DXs. people are like disturbed and shocked when I tell them that sometimes. They're like, oh.
And is that what you primarily shot with at the Olympics? Or?
No. So thankfully, I mean, you know, I would not go to the Olympics with the gear that I personally own. Thankfully Canon. So obviously like the Olympics is a big event. It's the Olympics for the camera companies too, right? So Canon, you know, basically gave Reuters whatever they wanted. We put in requests in like 2019 of all the things that we wanted, and I got, I think, everything that I asked for and like an extra camera body. So I was exclusively photographing on the 1DX Mark III, which is a nice camera. I hadn't gotten a chance to use it much. I had tried the Mark II. It was nice, but it didn't feel like as much of an upgrade as it should have been. I think the 3 is much better. I did get to try the R3 for a day. It's 30 frames per second is too many for me. It's a lot. It's a nice camera. But I didn't get a chance to kind of dig into a lot of the settings that I wanted to. Because,
let's pause just a second and make sure people know that a photographer who spends a lot of time shooting sports just said 30 frames, because I think that's great to hear too. They put these numbers out. I get excited about them. I talk about them. But the reality is, for so many people, do we really need 30 frames per second?
Yeah, look, I mean, like, obviously this is just my opinion. It's just me.
No.
I think, like, honestly, 20 is fine for me. Like, there are a few instances where 30 would be super, like, I'm not saying like it would never be helpful, but I think for like much of what I do, like specifically, I just don't think that I need that. 20, I don't know, 20 seems okay. Like, I'm perfectly happy with 20. 30 is like, it's great that that's a thing that, you know, that you can have if you need it, when you need it. But it's, you know, at that frame rate, even at 20, you know, you kind of have to adjust the way that you photograph. Like, it's a much more burst specific, because like, look, like, it's great for getting the moment, but like, at least for me, like, I got to look through all this stuff right now. And it's a lot harder if you jam on your, you know, your shutter finger and just like blast. You know, that's something that I do with a 1DX at 12 frames a second. If you get to 30, you're asking for it. You know, and so I shot a rhythmic gymnastics with the R3, and I was like, oh my God, I'm never telling anyone how many pictures I took today, because it's a disturbing amount. So yeah, I mean, it's super helpful to have that. I should mention that with the Olympics, we were shooting Ethernet. So we're connected to Ethernet and like sending from the back of our camera immediately to editors who handle the captioning and the cropping and the toning. And that was something to get used to as well. Just like having no control over your images, you know, you're shooting it, but like, you just hope that they crop it the way that you like. You know, you don't know what they're going to do, and you don't have time to really care. So for that specific instance, you know, for something like the Olympics, like, great, like 30 is fine. You know, someone else is dealing with it. I still have to look through, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you
the day you say you won't ever tell anybody how many you shot, could you hear angry shouting from the booth up above? I mean,
no. So thankfully, I mean, they would have to like lose all their money. Thankfully, we're choosing what, you know, what to send. You know, with if you're a Canon shooter, it's basically through the set, you know, the set button. So you're scrolling through all these pictures, you're sending them in order of what you shot. So no, they definitely were not getting 30 frames a second, like blasting from my camera. that would have taken down the server. I actually did do that on accident. Well, I don't want to say I did it. I was given control of one of the remote cameras on one of the last days, and something went wrong. I don't know if it was like a contact error with the Pocket Wizard. I don't know what happened, but I started getting all these messages on Teams being like, Lindsay, the camera has taken 1,000 photos. Lindsay, the camera has taken 10,000 photos. Oh, we have to reset the server. And I'm like, oh my God, no, this is my nightmare. Like, don't be a problem. So yeah, I don't know what happened with that, but yeah, if you shot that many frames into a server, it would explode.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, is the R3 in your future, or?
You know, I don't know. I'm not somebody that likes to spend a ton of money unless I have to.
Mhm.
And the R3 is like it's a great camera. But for the amount of money, I'm still kind of waffling between the idea of just like really committing to an R3 or two, because you have to keep in mind like it's not just one camera for me, it's two or three. And that ends up being a lot of money. I'm considering Sony. I'm not gonna lie. I've done a lot of testing between Canon and Sony, and
Mhm.
sort of in a middle ground right now. I don't know if I'm ready to like commit to anything, but I think each of Canon's mirrorless cameras is a good camera, but at least the R5 and the R6, they're kind of both missing certain things that the Sonys have, and the Sony, uh, you know, mostly the A9s is what I would be looking at. Those, they're great
Mhm.
cameras, but it's a total system switch is a big commitment.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm sort of waffling in between those right
Sure.
now. But yeah,
Um,
R3 is a nice camera.
I know some people at Sony. If you want to talk, let me know.
I've got a rep.
You,
I've got a rep that I'm talking
you,
to, but
okay. Yeah, I figured you did
I'm
too.
playing all the sides.
Gotcha. That's fair. Tanya has a good question that kind of relates into that. So you said during the Olympics, you basically got to shoot with other cameras. The 1DX series is pretty consistent in button placement and use and things like that. Was it difficult to kind of put a new camera in your hand right as you're about to shoot major
Yeah.
sporting event?
hmm I mean, no. So I think like handily, like because the 1DX series is almost essentially unchanged, except for the kind of the guts. Like getting those 1DX Mark threes was, it's like a couple of little adjustments, you're good to go. The R3, one of the other photographers was trying it out, and like he was like done with it. So I just got to play with it for a little bit. So I don't really know how much I'm allowed to say, but I think I've been vague enough. But yeah, I think that I would definitely not want to try a totally new type of camera, a totally new type of system right before the biggest assignment of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ursula has a great question in chat. How did you get paid for the Olympics? Is that a per day thing or paid per picture? Picture that gets published? How does that work?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think I get that question a lot, and I'm always like surprised. I don't know if that's something that used to happen more, like kind of like a per picture. It's like I don't know. I think of like Spider-Man being like, oh, you're my pictures, pay me for them. But no, you get a day rate for almost any like wire service or any editorial thing. It's most of the editorial rates are like pretty set. So it's like here's your rate, here's your assignment. Would you like it? So I got a day rate, and then like basically like a per diem for like food and laundry and stuff like that. But yeah, I think if it was per picture, it would just be very confusing. It's it's especially for a large wire, because the wire services, I guess for people that don't know how that works, wires, they have, so like Reuters, Associated Press, Getty, mostly Reuters and Getty, or Reuters and AP, they have their own staff, and they have their own stories that they write, but they also like sell these pictures. Other publications can buy those photos and use them. So like if you photograph something for Reuters, the New York Times can buy it and use it, or the Washington Post. That's like part of the wire service. And so I think it would probably just be, it would, especially with the sales rates, I don't think it would be a great deal to get paid per picture that's published. Although certain places do give you royalties. It just depends on the outlet. So
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I've got more questions, but I told you that this show runs about 90 minutes ish. So we're gonna try. Yeah, we're going to try to keep to that. So we need to switch gears a little bit and dive into some image review. These are images submitted to us by our pen members. If you're watching this and you're not a pen member, you're missing out on the best photo community online, and I really sincerely feel like that's true. It is a place that people interact with each other in a way that they would in real life. People are nice, people are supportive, people are helpful with constructive criticism. There's never any, when someone says, I'm considering Sony or Canon, somebody says, you idiot, why would you ever think Sony would be the camera for you? There's just none of that I see in a lot of other forums. So you can learn more about that at photorec.tv/pen. One of the perks, besides getting access to tons and tons of educational videos, is getting image reviews during this session. We also call it Lightroom tips and tricks too a little bit, but also you get, you can post in the community forum, you can post on the Facebook group, and you can submit to the bi-monthly photography, should I call it contest? It's kind of like the ultimate image review, and you can win if you get picked and win fabulous prizes from Bay Photo, which is our print shop of choice. We do not have time to get to all of these wonderful images today, but let me pull this up.
Sorry, guys, I talked too much.
No, everything.
No, this is awesome. Thank you, Lindsay. And I hope
asking me about my opinion on my life, so it's very exciting.
I've just been sitting here. I started to mention when you were fixing your mic that for me, it's like I'm just a spectator watching this interview. It's just fascinating. It's so cool to hear about your experience and what you've gone through, because what you do is not only so different than what, say, Toby and I do as photographers, but it's a lot different than what a lot of the chat room is being exposed to on any type of regular basis. So I'm just really grateful to have a guest like you on that has these sort of unique experiences, because the chat room follows us and we do a lot of interaction week in and week out, but there's probably a lot of people out there that want to do more photojournalism or freelance work and that type of thing. And quite frankly, Toby and I just aren't the go-to people for that. So this is really valuable.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Great. That's great. So we're just going to kind of spot through a couple of these different images, and we're going to start with Chris Bartel's Winter at Yellowstone.
Nice.
Yeah. Now, I have the advantage, just kind of telling our audience here, of seeing these in a little bit higher quality than Lindsay or Steve does, because they're seeing it after it's been compressed through the YouTubes a bit. This looks lovely. The first thing I'll ask Lindsay. I'll ask you this: it feels a little cool to me, which you could argue works well for snow, but it feels a touch too cool to me. I don't know. Does that come across to you at all?
Trying to, judge it on this tiny thumbnail. I think, yeah, I mean, I feel like you could go either way. Personally, maybe I would, I might try to see, if the contrast gets bumped up by a scotch. Curious to see what that looks like. But it's very crunchy and crisp in a good way. Looks cold.
Yeah. So I warmed it up a tiny bit and added added a scotch of contrast, and I think that does improve it. Steve, anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought it felt a little cool to begin with. I like the increase in contrast because now you're just seeing a little bit more dimension to it, a little more three-dimensionality. You could also go into your color panel and just take the blue down slightly. That'll take, because snow can get very, very blue. Those cool tones can get very blue very quickly, and you won't really know it until you start playing around with the blue slider alone, and you'll see how much can be in there. So I do this with my real estate work a lot. There's a lot of blue light that comes in from the outside or certain lights that are too bright, and I tone those blues down to kind of even things out.
All right, thanks, Chris. Kalyanish, I'm sorry, I'm not saying that very well. First time submitter from our pen group, so it's really, I love it when we see new names, and I love it when we see gorgeous Aurora shots.
That's an Aurora rainbow right there.
That's yeah. My comment here is kind of similar almost to Chris's with the snow having a little bit of color. The snow down here, I'm just going to see if I get a graduated filter and I bring it up from the bottom a bit across
move
that.
the color of just that bottom part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just let's just dial back the green a little. So I'm just adding a little red tint. Is one way that you could try to battle it back. You could also just decrease the saturation just to kind of get that snow looking a little more white. Now, I know it's picking up the Aurora green, but it was so green that it was kind of pulling me down into the bottom of the image.
Yeah, Aurora shots for me are always really difficult because I'm the green snow just doesn't look that great to me personally. So I always tone it down, and usually I bring the saturation down like you were doing. Adding a little bit of red helps to offset it. It's hard for me to tell on my screen, but the sky, you could maybe consider some more contrast or some dehazing. It almost has a little bit of a hazy look. If you dehaze that a bit, now there's a dance. It's like salt on food, as we talk about. Just a little bit can bring out the dish, but too much is going to spoil it. So, you'll start to see a few more stars appear, a little bit more black or even blue in the sky. You could cool those tones. It looks just a little warm up in the sky. But man, what a killer shot though. Is this up in Fairbanks on one of our tours?
I don't recognize this name as being somebody who's traveled with us. But
it looks like the property up there
it does look like Frank's Place. Yeah. I don't know. We'll have to know. And I don't think they're in chat right now. So yeah, cool. Okay. Nice work. And let's do Sean's here real quick. Lindsay, let me ask you something. When you're shooting editorial, how do you make the decision whether to go black and white or color, or is that something that the editor often decides?
It's always color. Often it depends a little bit, like I think it would have to be a really specific assignment to shoot it in black and white. I mean, I think that sometimes, like very occasionally, there might be a conversation about, oh, let's change this to black and white. Maybe occasionally I'll like make something into black and white on my Instagram or something later. But for editorial, for any sort of wire or newspaper, it's always in color. And then obviously, like, you might see it in black and white because it's in the inside section of a newspaper, and all color newspapers are super expensive, so it gets changed to black and white. But typically that's really not part of my workflow, even though it would kind of be more fun sometimes to just do black and white for certain things, because sometimes things just look better in some contrasty black and white. But for me it's color first, and then maybe black and white in some post. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm glad you went there with the thought process on this particular photo, Toby, because as soon as I saw it, I thought this is an awesome candidate for black and white. And I'd also throw some pretty deep vignetting in there. I know, we work hard to buy lenses that don't have it, and we take it away in lens correction and stuff. But something like this, where you're really kind of drawn into it, there's a lot of out of focus foreground that's right at the bottom of the image that to me is very distracting. And I think if you crop up, you're going to get really close to the structure. So what you could do is you could crop up to where you have more clarity, and then take it into Photoshop, create a canvas behind it with an extra inch or two at the bottom, and then do kind of like a content aware fill there. So you lose the blurriness. It was just very, it's like as soon as I noticed it, my eye was just staying at the very bottom of the picture, and I was missing the structure. So that looks good.
Yeah. Again, back to you, Lindsay. Photojournalism. We do say this from time to time. We often are in Photoshop removing things that aren't pleasing to the image. Maybe adding something. I think various of us do it to different degrees. I don't typically add things, but some people do. Photojournalism, probably not so much.
No, not unless you want to get fired. No.
Okay.
Yeah, I know it's very different. I get a little more nuts like with some of my sounder edit stuff sometimes or whatever, just because that's not editorial. It's technically like, I don't know, it's a weird like commercial sports, and so that's different. But for most of the stuff that I do, yeah, that's gonna get you fired. You can basically, I think the kind of like the standard sort of way of thinking is like, do what you can do in a dark room. But I don't think that's what they say, but that's not really accurate, because you can do a lot of weird stuff in the dark room, like physically the dark room. So it's basically what I do is like, I keep many pictures like pretty close to the original, which is, sometimes kind of a bummer if it's like needs some work, but like basic highlights, contrast, maybe some burning and dodging for certain outlets where that's acceptable. Like Reuters, for example, no burning and dodging. At one point, before I became more of a like trusted freelancer, literally, the instructions are: do not open in Photoshop. Literally crop it in. I use a program called Photo Mechanic, which is kind of like a sort of fancy bridge for people that aren't familiar with it. Mostly for like photojournalists. But yeah, Reuters at one point was like, you don't edit at all. So it's definitely a very different workflow on the photojournalism end.
Lindsay, are you pretty much always shooting JPEG? Or do you shoot RAW?
No, I would say I do a lot more RAW and JPEG now.
Okay.
So like for Reuters, for example, just because I've been doing a lot of work for them, they only want JPEG files. It's a lot of it has to do with editorial, like just making sure that it's not been doctored, because there have been issues like in not recently, but in the past where certain freelancers or stringers have like added smoke in the background of some pictures or added more smoke and stuff like that, and that's not journalistically acceptable. And so I think they want to keep that, make sure that it's harder to edit. So obviously raw files have a lot more. You have a lot more leeway, but I'll shoot raw for the sounders. I shoot raw for certain Reuters assignments, but mostly just for like my own, kind of like for my files. And then if Reuters for some reason like wants or needs them in the future for like a contest or something, I'll keep it for that. But yeah, lots of raw and JPEG for me.
Interesting. I didn't think you'd shoot that much raw, but that's pretty cool to hear, especially for your own collection of what you have. So when you were at the Olympics shooting for Reuters, you were able to shoot quite a bit of raw.
So for something like that, just because like the sheer number of pictures, I've never taken so many pictures over the course of a couple weeks. So that was all just large JPEG, and that's fine especially for the place that I was, it's like pretty well lit, obviously like a new building. And so that was fine. Yes, there were a couple things that I definitely completely screwed up and there's no getting those photos back, cause you bump the camera or you turn around and all of a sudden, you're like 2 stops brighter than you were on the other side. And there's just nothing you can do about that. It's just too fast. It's all about speed for the Olympics. You want to get certain, some photos. I don't know if this happened every time because I was too busy taking photos, but for higher priority things, like as soon as you take the photo, as soon as you've got like 1 minute, send it. They like basically like post their boilerplate caption and it should be out and on the wire in like 1.5 minutes. So it's like, do it as soon as you can immediately. So like, you're never going to have time to look at raw files. That's just too much stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Whether or not you want, I think I could have if I really wanted to, but that'd be a couple more external hard drives or something, and just a lot more stuff to deal with. So.
And Toby, I know we were doing image review, and I didn't mean to take us down a rabbit trail, but I was curious just to go back because you did a lot of interior shots at the Olympics with the gymnastics and stuff like that. And I heard you mention a Pocket Wizard at one point. Were you using flash at all, or were you using higher ISO to get those fast shutter speeds? what kind of settings were you using
No
inside?
flash. Yeah, no flash. So the Pocket Wizard was for one of the days where, so normally there was one other photographer who was mostly just running the remotes. I think he had like 7 of them set up, and like, I think, something that a lot of people don't realize is like, I mean, I got there like July 21st or 2nd or something, but some of these people literally got there like months in advance to set all this, because, all of this infrastructure has to be set up for all of these different wire services. It's like huge event for all these wires. And so, like this guy that had set this up, had been there for like maybe 2 months already. And so it was his job, but I think he was busy doing something that one day. And so I got the Pocket Wizard for all of these remotes.
Okay.
And that's the day. Yeah, that's the day where it decided to freak out. And like, I think it literally like they had to like stop the server. It was not a great message to get. I was like, okay, this is not what we want to be doing. But I'm glad that didn't happen on the first day, because that would not have been a great like confidence builder. I think it was fine in the end, but yeah. So yeah, that's what I meant by Pocket Wizard, just for the remotes.
And so I just assumed that there wasn't flash, which it sounds like there's not. Obviously with the athletes, stuff like that.
For the athletes.
So were you using lenses at like an f2.8 and just trying to speed up that shutter speed?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if these, because these are like literally what I pulled. The really cool thing is that because you're not editing your own stuff like at all, the Reuters has this app where you basically like open it and you can see in real time which pictures they've actually sent out and moved. So a lot of these are actually like from that. And so I don't know if the metadata is in there, but I want to say that I was mostly, I might have been, I would probably say like 4,000 ISO ish, and up, the Mark III is a good camera. It's high, like high JPEG. It's again, a lot of it is about speed. Obviously you want to make good pictures, but it's really just about like, let's get this out.
Yeah. A lot of our clients on tours, we talk to them about that, especially if we're shooting wildlife. We talk to them about, because people get really nervous to bump up their ISO. And, you get to these levels where you're talking, 1,600, 3,200, 4,000, and people are just kind of, I don't know about that. But the reality is, and we tell people this, is that today's camera sensors can handle those ISOs really well. And it's always better to have a slightly grainy, sharp picture than to have something that's out of focus.
Absolutely. Or no picture at all.
Depending.
So I mean, this is a very like photojournalist philosophy. It's like, you just have to make the picture, like you just have to make a picture. Maybe it's not the best of all time. Maybe it is, but like,
and you got the shot.
You just have to deal with whatever is happening, and like, obviously for something like this, the Olympics, they want to make sure that the pictures look good. So these are all very nice lighting systems, and, and everything was pretty neutral. That's the other thing, white balance is always a pain with events where you have to ship out JPEGs. And this facility was pretty easy to photograph in. So not a lot of complaints from me.
Nice. Yep. Some of these have EXIF, and this shot I think is a great example. This is ISO 4000, and it looks looks gorgeous.
It's funny because this picture was where I started thinking about that ISO question, because I was like, gosh, that looks really smooth, But I'm looking at a small image on my screen here, but it just looks so clean.
It looks very clean on my end.
Yeah.
So it's a good camera. It's I think a lot of people are switching to mirrorless. And a lot of it, I will say, has to do more with like the institutions. Like a lot of people are like, oh, it's, what are you using? But, you have to realize like many wire photographers, many newspaper photographers, like they're using what their company buys and what their company uses.
Yeah.
And a lot of these places have like so much invested in the older gear. So I think the 1DX series will kind of like, it'll go on for a little while. They're good cameras. It's just, they're not the future like a lot of the mirrorless stuff is. But
I'm a little old school. I, for one, am very happy to see DSLRs have a long tail, just the same way I was with film.
For sure.
Yeah, and that's that's something else that we remind folks from time to time. Just because there's something new and shiny, it doesn't suddenly make your camera less good. You know, it's still
Yeah, I think my philosophy is like, like use it until like literally I'm at the point where like my cameras and my laptop, my very loud fan has kicked on in my 2015 MacBook. You know, like I'm at the point where I need to upgrade, but like you know, just from like a kind of a business standpoint and just like a general like philosophy, like use what you have until it like actively hinders whatever you want to do. And right now, like my stuff is too old and I need to do certain things that now it's too hard to do with my current gear. So, you know, now is a good time for me to upgrade because I need those new features. But I think a lot of people like, you know, it's easy to get distracted by the shiny. So
we like, as human beings, we are wired to like shiny new things.
For sure.
Yeah.
We're just like pros.
I've kind of built a show around talking about it. Let's get a couple more of these in and then talk. One of the things we need to talk about is the new MacBooks. And Lindsay, I'm glad you're on. I'm glad you got an older MacBook. Steve actually is in the same boat as you.
I'm 2013 on my MacBook.
Yeah. Are you really? I didn't realize it was that old, Steve.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dinosaur.
Also ready for the home.
It's a boat anchor at this point.
No wonder you don't bring it on trips anymore.
That's exactly right. And it's getting to the point where it's starting to hinder me because backup solutions become difficult.
Yeah.
Okay. What do we want to tell Mike? I brought this. This is Mike Isles. He's down in the Columbia Gorge. I almost feel like we've done this picture, Mike, but I think it was just something similar to this. You've got some really nice ones from the gorge. I don't think you need everything up here. I think at a certain point, it just kind of is the same. And when we bring it down to this view, it just brings me into this valley a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Toby, come up with your crop just to lose the foreground and we're probably losing our leading line. So I don't know how I feel about it until I see it. I think I might like that a little better too. It just cleans it up a little bit. So I've said this before that sometimes there's an element that is next to the frame of your picture that starts and ends abruptly, and you don't have enough of it for your mind to really put the pieces together. And for me, that little piece of land right there, just, I don't know, it was just, it didn't need to be there. If I was painting the scene with a paintbrush, I don't think I would have included that. So this leaves it open to interpretation of your mind of where that water starts or goes, and it just stays vast, and I like that.
It might be that I know there's more down there. It feels a little tight to me now. I'd like to split the difference and maybe a little Photoshop work to bring the falls.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Hey, Lindsay, anything jumps out at you before we move on? Oh, did we lose her?
She freeze.
She looks frozen.
Oh no.
Oh, sorry, you're back.
Oh no, I froze. I was at the hockey rink. No, I was gonna say I agree with the crop. I think it looks much better with the sky getting cut down like that. I think it just helps the weight a lot more.
Nice. Okay. Christian has this one, which caught my eye.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's a cool tree.
Mm-hmm. So Toby, I was going to suggest you do this on the that one that we went black and white. It was like there was that wooden structure. Can you quickly just go into the transform tool? You can do it with this and do guided lines. I mean, you can hit auto and see what it does. He may have already done some transform to this. It
went a little crooked. Let's go to guided.
Yeah, go to guided. I would pick probably each of those columns for my verticals, and then two horizontals. One. I
kind of struggle with is that I kind of struggle with.
Oh wait, those are not. They kind of get wider as they go down.
Yeah, they flare a little bit. How about this back corner here?
Okay, yeah. Try to find a straight line,
and then let's bring that over there.
Yeah.
Oh no, sorry. Let's.
There we go. That's perfect.
I know. I fixed it up good for you, Christian. Real good. I did good.
It's so slight.
And then how about like across the floor right there, maybe?
Across the floor. and that probably would do it. And I think that was pretty minor, but it does make a difference. And I think if you were to toggle that off and guided, you'd notice just the slight changes. That's the architecture photographer in me getting really picky about angles.
Honest, I'm not sure. Yes, I think it needs to be done. I don't think I made it better though, because I'm noticing down here.
I mean, maybe the building is slightly crooked. Who knows?
That's true.
Could be, yeah.
The only thing I'm noticing that's bothering me a little bit is it feels like a little bit of haloing or loss of contrast right around the edges, kind of up here, and right over here. I'd like to see this feel kind of that whitewash that's happening.
Yeah,
I'd like to see that gone. But otherwise, I think this is a really lovely photo. And I love how you've used that archway to frame.
A lot of times I get that. I don't know if this is what Christian did, but a lot of times I'll get that kind of haziness next to an edge if I'm using a clone stamp tool in Photoshop to remove a person or something, and I'm painting on from someplace else and I've used a brush that's too soft. So I don't know if that's what he did, but if it is in fact what he did, next time just zoom in super, super tight, almost to the pixel level, use a harder brush and just draw that in. That way you avoid these hazy lines where they meet up, you know, say for a mountain to a sky or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I know there's a bunch more. We're going to cut it there. We'll get to those at some point in the future. Just not today. Those of you who submitted images, thank you so much. Those of you who are pen members, thank you so much. If you're watching this and you're not, it is just one of the many, many, many perks of joining our fantastic photo community. I saw a billboard in Las Vegas. It said probably the best show in Vegas. There's no quotes around it or anything. It just said that. So I'm just going to adopt that for our photo group. We're probably the best photo group online. I really do believe that. I love it. I got on Discord because both my kids are on Discord, and it's a nice way to talk to them as a group and have them still not respond to me like they don't respond to my texts. But there was a photo lounge, and I was like, oh, let me check out what's going on. It's just streaming by. It's so fast. It's so much. And then you see somebody's like, let me get feedback on this. And then they get no feedback. It's just, I was like, okay, it's another just one of these groups it's using new technology, but it's not any better than many of these other photo groups already out there. So
yeah.
So I just throw that out there. Really
Discord. I am clueless about Discord. My Xbox keeps yelling at me to join Discord, and I don't know what it's talking about because I don't play online.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about MacBooks. They were announced. This week was packed full of stuff. Monday, we had the Apple announcements with the new MacBooks. Tuesday, we had the new Pixel announced. Here it is. That's kind of exciting.
For some reason,
today we have the show.
That announcement.
Lame. Today we have the show, which I just elevated to the same level as the Apple and Google announcements. Tomorrow we have a Samsung announcement, and probably tomorrow the Sony A7 IV, if all of the rumors are correct, which I think they are. So we'll talk more about that after that comes out. But let's talk for a minute about these MacBooks. Steve, you getting one?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Yeah, my bank account supported it for sure. So here's the thing, though, for me, and I'm a little different than a lot of people. I do all my heavy lifting and editing on my desktop screen here. I love this. And so one of my mentors years ago in real estate photography taught me that, you know, you tend to be 40% more efficient in your editing on a bigger screen than using a laptop for that, because of the real estate and just what you can see and not having to zoom in and stuff as often. And I like that, especially when I'm turning over properties. But so I would like an Air. For me, the smaller, the lighter, the better. So a MacBook Air with an M1 chip would be my cup of tea. And then I'd use an external drive for my loading and backups and stuff. But having said that, these MacBook Pros with the M1 Pro and the M1 Max chip, I mean, you could go all in on a MacBook and not even have a desktop. They are so crazy powerful. The battery life is awesome now. And the best thing about it is that they brought all the ports and stuff back. You can put an SD card in it. It's got MagSafe back. It's got Thunderbolt. It's got HDMI. Thank you, Apple.
It has all the things that our old laptops have.
Yeah, yeah, it's part of the big. I mean, I've
I never lived with the dongle system.
Yeah, exactly. I've got my 2013 boat anchor of a laptop, but at least it has all those ports that I can plug into. And so yeah, if I had an extra couple $1,000 to throw at a system, this would be a great time to upgrade if you need to upgrade your laptop.
Yeah. I've been getting, because, you know, on trips, we've been talking about these, and I've been getting a lot of emails, you know, which one should I recommend? Let me say this real quick, and then Lindsay, I'll get your impressions. My 2015 stopped working reliably. Was it like about a year and a half ago ish, I guess? And I tried a little Dell laptop for a while. Actually, I tried 2 different Dell laptops for a little while because I felt like there was good value, and I really just wanted a portable machine on trips that I could use to reliably back up images, work on a couple of them. And I hated it. I mean, it's just, I'm sorry. Those people, you people who use Windows, I am sorry. They are just not, you know, they're just not. It's just not a Mac. And I dislike being like that because I'm pretty much platform agnostic. I used to use Windows for many years, but once you use Mac for a while, there's just so much less stuff that you have to deal with. Anyway, so I was like, then the Airs came out, the M1 Air, and I thought, you know, this is the new silicon chip. It sounds like it might be a little underpowered for what I need, but I have been so happy with this device. This is the MacBook Air with 16 gigs of RAM, which, you know, I was nervous. That seems like a little. It outperforms my older iMac. And, you know, over this last week, Chris has been away. So I've been plugged into her big monitor upstairs, using it in the upstairs office. And I edited a 15-minute long 4K video, which, you know, for me, that took me the last 3 or 4 days. I've been working on that video. It run no issues at all editing that. I think back to all of the pictures I've edited on this machine over the last, I've had it now coming, I think I got it in early January of this year. So we're up to, you know, 8 months or so, 10 months. Sorry, I can't count. I haven't had, there's not been a single time where I've been editing a picture feeling like I was constrained by the performance of the machine. Yes, the screen's a little on the small side, and I really appreciate it when I can plug into a big screen, but it is great. The only real negative thing I can say are 2 negative things. One, I've mentioned this on the show before. I have had this weird bug in exporting large amounts from Lightroom where, you know, it should have taken maybe an hour or 2 because it was like 400 or 500 images, part of a time lapse. And somehow in the middle of the night, as it was exporting, it slowed down to like 1 a minute. I've seen that happen twice. I don't know what that was. That's one issue, but again, it's only happened twice in 10 months of owning it. The other is, and Lindsay, you mentioned this, I'm living kind of in dongle hell. I mean, it's just, it hasn't been too big a deal until I went on vacation and I thought I had a dongle with me, but I didn't. And so I had car cameras with me that didn't have USB connections that I had brought a cord for. And I actually ended up using a different camera as a card reader. And that was really clunky and not great. So I probably won't be upgrading anytime soon to these, but I am insanely jealous. And I might change my mind solely because of the dongles.
Yeah, I think you should. And then you should sell your Air to me.
Okay. All right. Now, I'll say this. People are asking which model should I get? And based on my experience with how well this original M1 Air performs, I have no hesitation in recommending the baseline 14-inch with, you know, the 8-core, the 14-core GPU. The only thing I would, and 16 gigs of RAM, the only thing I'd say you could do if you wanted is bump it up to 32 and 1 terabyte. But I think for most of you watching this, that's going to be way more than you need, and the base model is going to be fine.
So the baseline is 512, huh? And I'm glad you said that because I didn't know. I was going to ask you if it was worthy to bump up to the 10 core from the 8.
Mhm.
And it seems to me these things are now, if you were going from my 2013 to any of these, it would be a huge bump up for me. So I'm fine with going baseline, but yeah, I was curious about that. So I'm glad you mentioned it.
Lindsay, you got any thoughts? How seriously how are you considering / drooling over these?
I just want to get rid of this laptop. It's like the fan is just so loud, and like anytime I have to export more than like 100, 50 photos in Lightroom, I like want to cry. I think, I mean, I guess like Steve said, I think part of me is like, it's like we've got like a Gollum Smeagol thing happening here, where I'm like, part of me is like, get the fancier one, future proof, that's like my like thing that I'm telling myself is like, oh, if you spend more money now, you can keep it for longer, and that'll be smart. But part of me just thinks, like, actually, you might be okay with a lower spec one than you probably want. I think like I literally the other tab that I have open is literally like the Apple Store in my browser right now. I've been looking at the different configurations for maybe too long, and I think my brain is like maybe melting a little bit, just trying to decide how much money I want to commit to this. Because it's I think like I mentioned before, I've got some camera upgrades that need to happen too. Lots of money that is leaving me this year. So but the laptop thing is like, yeah, I didn't buy the original M chip because I was like, you know what, I don't know, I keep hearing all the tech YouTube bros keep talking about how I should wait, so let's hope they're right. And they look great. I think I think my decision is just like, how long do you really want to keep this? And like, how much better do you think they're going to be in like 2 years or something versus, keeping it for 4 years. So I'm kind of debating on one or two versions. I think for me, I'd probably at least get a terabyte just because I feel a little bit constrained by the 512 that I have right now. But yeah, definitely doing a lot of waffling back and forth between, like, do I really need the Max? No, I don't need it now, but will I need it in a year? You know what I mean? So it's a lot of like, what version of me is gonna, be regretful? Like, how will I regret this, or will I not?
Yeah.
They're not cheap. So it's a lot of like, how am I gonna allocate all the money that I've got on all these upgrades? So
Yeah.
You don't have unlimited funds?
Not yet. Working on that. Should have bought the Bitcoin like 8 years ago, right? Like,
yes.
Tragic. If only I had spent $1,000 on Bitcoin like 5 years ago or something. But yeah, I think for me, I'm most likely gonna get one of these new ones. I was considering maybe just getting like a higher, like maybe like the 16 gig, the M1, but I don't know. I think the ports are nice to have. I'm a big fan of MagSafe because I trip, and saving your like $3,000 laptop, or at least $2,000 laptop is feels like a worthy cause. So that's the fun of freelancing, is all this stuff that you get to buy. That is, just nice thing about being on staff somewhere is you like the Seattle Times literally has like the pool room. You walk in and like, I mean, obviously it depends on what the other photographers are using, but you're like, should I grab the 400 or the 600 or the like the 200 to 400? And you're like, oh, it's nice, I don't have to pay for this. And now it's like, okay, you got to commit to these things, and you're going to use your own dollars to pay for it. So yeah. It's a different workflow and a different mindset.
Yeah. I actually met Bettina shooting the full moon last fall, I think it was, and she had borrowed the 500 or 600 from the newsroom and shooting the full moon rising over Seattle. So that was cool. One more thing I'll say about the Air is no fans in it, which I love. That might be an issue with that larger export. It might start thermally throttling that, but I don't think it's that, because it wasn't hot on the bottom when it was having that issue. So I'm not sure what it was, but yeah, no fans. Yeah. So I think those 14 inches are great for 95% of people out there. And again, they'd be happy with them. But they are not cheap. I'll say that, but they're going to last. As evidenced by you, Lindsay and Steve, both having machines that, although are heavy and maybe a little fan noisy, are still
Although
working.
actually, I think the same weight. Like I think I just weighed looked mine up, and like the new ones are heavy, like relative to the last one. I think so. Like I want to say the 14 inch, the new one is like 3.5 pounds.
Yeah,
I want to say yours is like under 3. That might be the Pro.
Yes, mine's 2.8. My Air is 2.8, and the 14 is 3.5.
Okay,
that's got to be
just
pretty good reduction under the previous Pro, though, because I remember there being a big difference between the weight of the Air and the weight of the Pro. Even though the size was pretty similar, it was just a lot heavier with the Pro. And that's a big reason why I want the Air, because I just want something small to take on trips and then come home and do all my heavy lifting here. But if they really reduce the weight of the Pro, for me, that's a big selling point too.
Yeah, I want to say I know for sure that the ones that just came out, the M1 Pro / Max, the 14 inch is definitely like 3.5 pounds.
Yeah,
I want to say is maybe the same weight as the 2015 Macro Pro that I have. So I guess really not a change in that department for me, but ideally I would have like an iPad and then like, a fancy Mac Pro and then like a medium laptop. But for me, as someone who has to like, actually think about how I'm going to pay for that, I think for me, I'll probably most likely end up getting like a slightly future-proofed one of these N1 Pros or the M1 Max chip, and then just I don't have a nice like big external monitor right now. I actually like edit a lot of the stuff that I do like just on this 13, which is a little cramped. But I do so many things like out and about that it makes less sense for me to have like the nice big fancy desktop where you get all your stuff done. Something that I definitely would love to have, but money. So
gotcha. Yeah. Just for people's information, the 16 inch is 4.8 pounds, the 14 inches 3.5 pounds. I don't think that covers the brick, the power brick, which on the 16 inch, I think that brick is huge. It's like
it looks very big.
60 watt USB-C. That's one interesting thing I learned about the MagSafe is it is MagSafe on one end, but on the other end, it is standard USB-C. So if you have one of these small little chargers that puts out enough power for your Mac, you can carry that along and lighten your load even a little bit more. So just something to keep in mind. Last thing that I said we were going to cover, I just want to mention this real quick. It's very interesting. Just kind of points out that none of us really know what we're doing. I can't find the post now, but Instagram shared in the last couple of weeks, here are tips to be successful. And in those bullet points, it said use 3 to 5 hashtags. 3 to 5 hashtags. For years, everybody's been saying you can do 30 hashtags. I think it's 30. Do them all. Do all of them. And now they're saying 3 to 5.
So why are they saying 3 to 5? Is that they want to reduce the amount of hashtags that people are doing, or have they found that
like rewarded for using less hashtags?
Yeah.
So I went and did a little research, found one guy that had on 2 different accounts ran a popular post with 3 to 5, ran a popular post with I think 10 to 15. And at that time, and again, this was just two single posts. The one with more hashtags still had better reach across those different hashtags and discoverability. So even though Instagram's telling us only to use 3 to 5, it looks like maybe still keep using more. I don't know. I just wanted to
they like skip on their servers. They need like a little extra. They can't store the hashtags.
But I mean. I don't know if you heard, Lindsay. I talked to so many people I shared with the whole world that I was kicked off Instagram for a period of time for absolutely no good reason. And it's just very frustrating that this is a incredibly large company with incredible deep pockets. And we have little weird things like this and, so many bugs too, but I don't want to.
No, he says for no good reason, but the reality is that other than a select few. We don't know what's going on with his OnlyFans page these days. So
Juicy.
Yeah.
This is where the fun starts, right? There's
Yeah.
It's like an after show that we talk.
Yeah, we
about.
usually have a
On that note, we're done. We're all done. Everybody, goodbye. Thanks. We are going to start to wrap up. We've been answering some questions, but Dalen had a good question that we had missed early on, Lindsay, when we were talking about your the Olympics. She was curious what the shutter speed, if you knew it, was of the speed canoers that you were racing. I'm going to pull that back.
I wish I I did the lazy thing, and I just took like all of these photos like that probably had all the metadata strips. So like, I don't remember. I would say my guess, this is maybe a good test for my own self. I would say like, I maybe a 1/6 of a second less, again, like slower than I would have thought was successful. Yep. You know what I mean? Like, I think I maybe had a series that were like closer to 30 or something, that I just like wasn't getting what I wanted. But I can take a look at that later. I don't know how to like get back and answer that question in a chat after this is over, but
you could post it. You could post it in a comment under this video once it's once it's live. And Dalen, you can check there. I'd be curious to know too. I love it. It looks like the perfect shutter speed for that. I just love. They're so crisp, but that motion that they've got going on.
Oh, the panning.
Man, a lot of like luck.
The name.
What was that?
Well, you can read the name so crystal clear. Like the panning is right on the money.
Yeah.
I mean, again, like that one worked out really well. I should say like for that day, the canoe sprint day. So essentially there were 2 days where there weren't gymnastics. So it was like regular gymnastics, then trampoline gymnastics. And there were 2 days where there was nothing. And so I didn't have anything to do technically. So I was like, do I just get a break? What happens? And then like the night before both nights, they were like, great, you're going to athletics. You're going to help them out. So there's like, an existing crew of both of these sports that I sort of like dropped in on and helped out with. And it was basically just there to photograph the medal ceremonies because logistically it was too hard for them to do that. Like the way that you get down to the area was just like too far away. So I kind of, for canoe sprint, I kind of just could like do whatever I wanted, which I guess was more panning because I couldn't figure out what else to do with that. So I don't know that I would have shot like that if I was the only one responsible for those photos. That was handy for sure.
Cool. All right, that's it. We're gonna wrap up. Lindsay, thank you so much. Everything you shared was fantastic. Really, really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to sit down with us and chat a little bit about the Olympics. If you're watching the show, please go follow Lindsay at her Instagram. There's Lindsay Wasson, and see what she's up to. What's that?
Just my name. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah. That's nice. Good. I like it. Nothing fancy. And see what she's doing from time to time. It would be a great way to thank her for sharing her time for the show.
Yeah.
And that other guy.
Oh, I was just gonna say the other guy. I just wanted to thank you, Lindsay, and you're doing so many awesome, fun, exciting things. So hopefully you come back sometime because we'd love to kind of do an update occasionally on what you're shooting next or what's been going on. And we won't have to wait another 4 years to have you back as an Olympic photographer.
Right.
Do you have any idea will you be invited to shoot the Winter Olympics?
I'm on the docket. Yeah. Cool. So yeah.
Very cool.
That's my teaser for that. So.
Nice. Yeah. Well, maybe we can check in with you. I'd love to check in with you down the road and hear what you're up to. Sure. Very, very cool.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Really appreciate it. It was fun.
Oh. And if you don't already follow Scurich, you should follow Scurich. She's going to be posting lots of pictures of him eating pizzas in Italy. Real soon.
Yeah, that is cool. I'm posting to Instagram these days. So I finally figured it out.
I just noticed that I feel like I'm a lot more green than I was at the beginning of the show, but maybe I was always been this green. I don't know. If you're still watching the show and you haven't already, even despite my greenness, take a moment and give this show a thumbs up. If you know there's no ads running on this, other than my little pitch to you about the Photo Enthusiast Network, you got this ad-free, packed full of great information. So the least you can do is give it a quick thumbs up. I appreciate that. And if you're not already a subscriber, hit that subscribe button along with the little bell. That would be very nice. As I mentioned, Steve and I will be stuffing our faces with pizza over the next 2 weeks. So this show returns on November 10th. We'll be back to chat with you all some more. So everybody, thanks so much for watching. Thank you, Lindsay. And we'll see you again soon.
Yes.
Bye-bye.